Hello everyone, Paul Bertorelli for AVweb and Aviation Consumer. You know, if you think it's your duty as a pilot to do some cool aviation videos to keep YouTube from being overrun with cat videos, the first thing you're going to need
is a camera or two or three. So maybe it's a good thing that there are a bunch of these so-called point of view or action cams on the market. Without looking too hard, you'll find half a dozen choices, including the Ion, the resurrected Contour line, the Sony Action Cam, and Panasonic's HX8500 series. Now these are all worthy choices, but when it gets down to it, you're most likely to shop the 800-pound gorilla of action cams, and that's this one, the GoPro. The latest model is the Hero 3. And while GoPro dominates the action cam market, about a year ago Garmin surprised us by announcing its own action cam, the VIRB. Since Garmin is among many things an aviation company, we wondered if the VIRB is an aviation-specific action cam, so we decided to find out. First, the basic specs, starting with the GoPro. The Hero 3 is sold in three models, mainly distinguished by price point. All three have identical video specs and will shoot up to 1080p, as this chart shows. They vary in still camera capability. Bottom of the line is the White Edition. At $199, it's the cheapest of the five cameras in this comparison. Next up is the Hero 3 Plus Silver for $299.99, and top of the line is the $399.99 Hero 3 Plus Black. So what's the difference? Not that much, really. The Black has higher still photo resolution, and it comes standard with a remote control. But I don't think it's worth paying for the remote because all three GoPro models have wireless capability and work well with GoPro's free wireless app. And that gets us to the thing people love to hate about the GoPro, the operating logic. It reminds me a little of DOS circa 1983. For example, the GoPro has only two control buttons, one on the top and one on the front. The front serves as both the power on control and the menu select control. You just push it to step through the various menu choices. The top button should be thought of as the execute button. Select the menu item you want, then select it with the top button, which also serves as the record and shutter button. But sometimes menus require step-throughs that you can't remember because you can only see one menu item at a time. Here I want the wireless control, but I can't quite remember exactly where it is in the menu structure. There it is in the setup menu. A common mistake is to push the menu button once, which switches the camera to still mode. Then when you press the top button, you get a still, not a video. But it'll be a nice still. Alright, so it's not rocket science to run this camera. If you use it all the time, it's not so bad. If you use it just occasionally, it can drive you nuts. But here again, the free app to the rescue. Communicating wirelessly with the camera, the app greatly simplifies the menu structure, and it also live streams so you can aim the camera. And that's a better deal than buying the $79 viewer shown here. The viewer is a nice accessory, but it's an additional expenditure you probably don't need since the app does the job. On the other hand, it is a touchscreen that simplifies menu navigation, and it does allow playback. Now on to Garmin's VIRB. There are two models to pick from, the VIRB and the VIRB Elite. They have identical photo and video specs, but only the Elite, it's the white one, has remote app capability. The basic VIRB sells for $229 discounted, while the Elite discounts to around $319. Both the VIRB and the Elite have remote control capability through a dedicated remote or Garmin's D2 watch. The Elite has an app for either iOS or Android platforms, but the app doesn't stream, and that makes it less useful than the GoPro app. Also, there's no viewer option, but both cameras are equipped standard with what we would call a minimal viewer. It's not exactly HDTV, but at least you can use it to aim the camera. Where the VIRBs really shine is in operating logic. The cameras have dedicated keys along the right side, and the menu structure is easier to figure out than it is on the GoPro in our view. To record, just slide the record button forward, slide it back to stop it. You don't even have to turn the camera on. Sliding the record switch does that. One last cool thing the VIRBs have is a built-in GPS. You can overlay that data on your video if you want, along with heart rate and other data that the ANT+ network will display. The GoPro can't do this. So what do you do about attaching POV cameras to the airplane? Well, probably the best way is to use the pressure-sensitive adhesive that both Garmin and GoPro provide. Yeah, these will stay attached. I'll probably put a duct tape safety on these. Look kind of ugly in the video, but they're pretty strong. The real problem is actually getting them off, which requires a heat gun. But to tell you the truth, for high-wing airplanes where there's a strut, it's just as easy to use duct tape. It's cheap and it's flexible. And how about the footage quality? Well, it depends. Like all cameras of any kind, these cameras don't like the high contrast, low angle light of midday. This footage was shot in late morning and you can see the results. The GoPro is on the left, the VIRB is on the right. The footage is 1080p and it's uncorrected for color, but it has been cropped to match the frame. You can judge it for yourself, but in this light the VIRB produces a more color-dense, well-balanced image than the GoPro does. Also note how the cameras react to airframe vibration and the aerodynamic buffet. The VIRB on the right produces a wobbly image in response to vibration, while the GoPro on the left has a just noticeable shake that's not too objectionable. But that's probably because the VIRB is out in front on the slipstream and the GoPro is slightly protected by the VIRB being in front of it. Both cameras behave about the same. But what about in better, more ideal lighting? This is being shot in early morning indirect lighting, which both cameras actually handle pretty well. Again, the GoPro is on the left, the VIRB is on the right, and the audio is being recorded in a separate camera with a lav mic. Both cameras produce a richer, more color-balanced image in this case, but you can definitely see a difference. Generally, the GoPro image is a little bluer and softer in the mid and far distances, while the VIRB is slightly sharper in the distance. But I'm not sure the difference is really obvious all the time. Okay, the bottom line. Which of these cameras to pick for aviation use? Well, I don't think you'll really go wrong with either one of them. For in-cockpit shots, I like to use the VIRB because it's easier to mount and that slide switch really works well. For exterior shots, I'll use the GoPro when the lighting is good and the VIRB when it isn't. If you don't want to buy that $79 LCD viewer for the GoPro, the remote wireless app works a lot better on the GoPro than it does on the Garmin VIRB. You can find a full report on both of these cameras in the September 2014 issue of Aviation Consumer. For AVweb and Aviation Consumer, I'm Paul Bertorelli reporting. Thanks for watching.